I know at one point you said that you and your father didn't get along. And
We
you
didn't
like
talk
your,
for almost 10 years.
Can you tell us, with the time we have, a little time we have left, what happened that made you and your father distant, and what brought you back together?
Well, I disliked my father because I thought he punished us too harshly. My father was from the South, and they would spank their kids pretty harshly.
Yeah.
My dad had a belt, and if he thought we did something wrong, he'd take out the belt and he'd whip us. And I thought it was absolutely, and still think, it was excessive. I was a kid who all you had to do was sit me down and tell me what to do, and I'd do it. My little brother was much more hard-headed, but I was not like that.
Right.
But he treated us all the same way, and I really resented it. But all of us disliked my dad. My older brother, my little brother, all of us intensely disliked my father.
How did your mother feel about him?
Well, I talk about it in a book I wrote about my dad. It's called Two Lives, Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. And people ask me about, how did your mom deal with it? My mom did not think we were being punished too harshly.
Oh, good.
And I don't think so now. Right. At the time I did.
Right.
So my dad starts a cafe when I'm 10 years old. I had to work for the SOB. I didn't want to work for him, but I had to. And my dad would yell at me in front of people. When I say cafe, it's a diner, and everybody can see what's going on. Everybody can hear what's going on. So it's embarrassing. So I worked there when I was 10 to 15 years old. Now I'm 15 years old, and my dad's still yelling at me. And I said, Jesse, next time this guy yells at me, I'm out of here. Nobody ever defied my father. So my father yelled at me. I didn't have enough guts to leave. He did it again. I didn't have enough guts to leave. But he did it one time, and I did. I walked out. And in fact, it was full of people during rush hour. The waitress had called in sick, so my dad was there by himself. And he was not too happy about it when he came home.
Yeah.
And I'm laying on my bed in my bedroom. My dad comes in and he goes, why did you leave? And for the first time I spoke back to my father. I said, Dad, I got sick and tired of the way you spoke to me, and I'm not putting up with it anymore. My dad paid me $10 a day plus tips. He balled up the $10, threw it at me as I lay on my bed. He walked out of my bedroom, and we did not have another conversation for 10 years.
Wow.
And when I say not a conversation, I mean nothing. I was in high school. My dad worked long hours. I knew what the hours were. I just made sure we were never in the same part of the house at the same time. I graduate from high school. I go to college in the East Coast. I would come back to visit my mom, but I would never be in the room with my dad. Law school, never be in the room with my dad. Now I'm 25 years old, Jesse. I passed the California bar. I passed the Ohio bar where I was living. I was making the equivalent of $150K, and I'm 25 years old. I should be living large, and I can't sleep. I know it's because of my dad.
Yeah.
I never thought we were going to be friends, but I knew that we needed to resolve something. So I called my secretary. I said, cancel my appointments. I'm going back to LA. I'll be back in a few days. So I flew to LA. Didn't tell my parents I was coming because I didn't want my dad to prepare. Took a cab from LAX to the restaurant, which is in the Pico Union area, and I walk into the cafe. And my dad was shocked to see me. It's 1:30 when I walked in. They closed at 2:30. And I had a couple big pieces of luggage. My dad said, should I put your luggage in the back? I said, no, Dad, I'm only going to be here for 5 or 10 minutes. I want to tell you something. I was going to tell him what a horrible father I thought he was. I figured he'd tell me that I was an ungrateful son. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, out the door. At least maybe I'd be able to sleep.
All right.
So Dad said, wait until we close. So I sat there, and I sat there for an hour, and I said, now, Larry, don't tee off on the guy. Just give him the cliff notes, and then get out of here in 5 or 10 minutes. So my dad sat down, a stool this close. I teed off on him. And Jesse, you know how I can go.
Yeah.
I spoke for 20 minutes nonstop. The time you whipped me in front of my best friend Carl, the time you whipped me in front of my cousin Elaine, who's visiting from Cleveland, the time you did this, I told him everything I could tell him. And after 20 minutes, I was out of ammo. And my dad said, is that it?
Amazing.
You didn't speak for me for 10 years because of that? Let me tell you about my father. Now, 25 years old, this is the first time I've heard this. You know your last name, Elder? I said, yes. He said, that's not the name of my father. I said, what? Who's your father? I have no idea. You never met your father? No. Well, who's Elder? Elder was the man who was in my life the longest. He was an alcoholic who physically abused my mom. And when I tried to stop it, he would beat me up. My mother was illiterate. She had a series of men she lived off of. She didn't want to work. And when I was 13 years old, he said, I came home. I started quarreling with my mom's then boyfriend. She sided with the boyfriend and threw me out of the house, never to return. And for the next 8 hours, Jesse, my dad explained to me what he did with his life. Picked up trash, he did this, he joined became a Pullman porter for the trains. That's how he came to California. This is before the war, Athens, Georgia. My dad's from Athens, Georgia. He said, I went to this place called California, this city called Los Angeles, and you could walk in the front door of a restaurant and sit down and get served. My dad always had packages of crackers and cans of tuna with him because he never knew if he'd be able to get a meal.
Right.
And he said, I made a mental note, someday I'm coming back to California, to Los Angeles. So he told me his whole life story, and as he's talking to me, he's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah. And now I'm crying. And I said, Father, please forgive me. And my dad said, it was nothing to forgive, you just didn't know, and he just went over his rules. Right just on, follow the advice I've always given you and your brothers. Hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You can't control the outcome, but you're 100% in control of the effort. Before you complain about what somebody did to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, he said, Larry, no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. And from that moment on, my dad and I were the best of friends for the next 35 years.
Right on. Amazing. Mm-hmm. I know you said you were so angry at him that you decided you weren't going to even make children because of that.
Yeah, I disliked my father so intensely, Jesse. I never wanted my kid to feel that way about me, so I decided early on I wasn't going to have kids.
Wow.
It wasn't until I got older that I realized it didn't have to be that way. Yeah. And I deeply regret now not having had kids. Yeah. People always tell me, well, it's not too late. Well, I'm 72 years old. I'll be 72 in April. And
so you think 72 is too late?
Yeah, I do.
Abraham was not 100.
Well,
and Sarah was 99.
As good a condition as I think I'm in, I'm not sure I'm going to make it that far. My dad lived to be 95 years old.
Wow, amazing.